Hello and welcome to the Dragons Are Real podcast. Today's Wednesday, so that means it's Kickstarter time. So let's have a look at what's new on the Kickstarter world. So we start off with One More Into the Void, a science fiction role-playing game of bringing the family back together for one last job. This is inspired by the television show Star Trek Picard and the video game Mass Effect 2. One of the players is a captain who must make amends, face the consequences of the past, try to regain the loyalty of their crew, and together take on impossible odds. The rest of the players make up the crew, who must learn to believe in the captain and in each other again, or risk losing all. Now this is based on the Mobile Frame Zero Firebrand system by McGay and Vincent Baker. You do not need to prepare a plot in advance or actually have a game moderator. Instead, it's made up of mini games, each one guiding a single dramatic scene or a small group of them. And the game is best played across 2 sessions. You get to choose from 6 sample playbooks to create a crew: the captain, the veteran, the reformed, the believer, the broken, the strange. And then you choose from 9 mini games to play, starting with a recruitment montage and ending with the final mission. Once More Into the Void. Next up is Broken Compass. Adventure is back. Now is your chance to grab the both old and new seasons of this pulp adventure game. This is an RPG inspired by the great movies and games of the genre, from The Mummy all the way to Uncharted, passing through on the way Indiana Jones and Tomb Raider. You play as an adventurer in search of great treasures. There is a free 100 pages quick start available for immediate download. The system is based on the Fortune system, a set of game mechanics that uses pools of 6-sided dice to determine the outcome of any task that may entail risks or end in accidents. To succeed, you don't need to roll high totals. Your aim is to roll 2, 3 or 4 of a kind, which become successes. There was already 1 season last year, and this one adds 2 further seasons to Broken Compass. Season 2, Jolly Roger, where you adventure in the Caribbean Sea in the golden age of piracy, and it includes additional rules for dueling, gambling and naval battles. Season 3 is Voyages Extraordinaires, which takes inspiration from Jules Verne's adventure classics like Journey to the Centre of the Earth and Around the World in 80 Days. It also includes additional rules for managing missions, wagers, extraordinary inventions, as well as tips for creating adventurers, clubs and expeditions. That's Broken Compass Adventure is back. Next up we have They Stirred. This is a rules-light tabletop role-playing game of hard choices and player-directed discovery in a zombie-infested post-apocalyptic world. You explore a world turned on its head by a plague of the living dead, where humanity struggles to carve out a new place in the ruins of the before time. The core of the game is the idea that the zombies aren't the real threat, instead they're merely a backdrop that exposes people for who they are. For every time you clash with a mindless dead, expect to come into conflict with other groups of survivors at least once. This is collaborative storytelling where you collaborate with the GM to create a world chock full of locations you want to explore, populated with groups you're interested in meeting. After deciding how the zombie apocalypse happened, you'll be drawing the maps of the wastelands and adding your choice of spoils and dangers. Although the system is not described, the author says it is well tested. That is They Stirred. Next up is Delvers to Grow, Dungeon Fantasy RPG powered by GURPS. This is fast modular character creation, would-be heroes from 62 points and higher as player characters, henchmen or supporting cast. This is fully compatible with the professional template system in the Dungeon Fantasy Adventures book. Delvers to Grow lets you start much earlier in the hero's journey. The Delvers to Grow project contains 4 volumes, the construction portions plus 3 example books. These detail how much of the 12 professions treated in the Build a Bjorn construction could grow. You quickly generate characters ready to play in 5 to 20 minutes and includes an adventure with the Crypt of Kreisvik. That's Delvers to Grow, Dungeon Fantasy RPG powered by GURPS. Next up we have Broken Tales, a dark tabletop RPG of upside-down fairy tales where villains seek redemption and nothing is how you remember it. This reinterprets traditional fairy tales through a dark lens, appending their premises. Players belong to the Order, a secret group operating on behalf of the papacy, whose duty it is to investigate events and threats beyond human understanding. An eerie 18th century Europe becomes the background for these unusual heroes, villains from various fairy tales now acting as protagonists in the new reality shaped by the child saviour. Broken Tales is based on the Monad Echo rule system, and it's a D6 pool based system where you try to get automatic successes from your applicable descriptors and or spending dice from a pool, which is your inner strength. If you roll a 1 on the dice, you lose it from your pool, and it's looking at 3, 5 or 7 successes for tasks. That is Broken Tales. Next up is Blood and Justice Welcome to Nocturne. This is a source book for Prowlers and Paragons Ultimate Edition, the superhero RPG. This setting presents a gritty Iron Age superhero setting, a dark and frightening place where ordinary people live in terror of crime and senseless violence. The first rulebook for Evil Beagles Games, superhero role-playing game Prowlers and Paragons Ultimate Edition, and the first setting outside of the Pinnacle City universe for the Omniverse. They hope to fund 2 adventures and the first supplement for Blood and Justice, a book of villains and evildoers. For those who aren't aware, Prowlers and Paragons Ultimate Edition uses ordinary 6-sided dice and a simple dice pool mechanic that makes action resolution fast. The rules allow for both narrative degrees of success and a traditional pass-fail task resolution, letting you play however your style prefers. So that is Blood and Justice Welcome to Nocturne. Next up we have You Are the Dungeon. You exist on the margins. You are brooding, tempting and insatiable. A tarot-driven game for 1 or more players. So this is a single-player journaling experience that puts you in the role of a living, sentient dungeon, eternal and indomitable. You create your initial space, allow a foray of adventures into your depths, reward their greed appropriately and linger in their minds and hearts for the rest of their lives. The adventures are determined by drawing from a deck of tarot cards, or if you haven't got a tarot deck, a standard deck will just work fine. There are rules for playing with a group of any size, guidance for incorporating your dungeon into an ongoing RPG campaign, tips for non-fantasy settings. That is You Are the Dungeon. Next up we have Necrobiotic, a dystopian tabletop RPG. The dead walk among us. It was we who put them back on their feet. This is Necrobiotic. So it's a post-apocalyptic game of melancholy where the dead walk among us. Someone needed to tend the fields, so the scientists reanimated the corpses to work using precision mechanics and frontier biology. The old world is gone, the population has shrunk, the deaths have increased, and there are fewer births. It's an original game system based on deck building mechanics with a standard deck of playing cards, though tarot cards can also be used. Players will always know what they can do alone or together, and the game's mechanics will easily push the player's roleplay towards the character's features, highlighting everyone's speciality. So let's see what we've got in the old 5e section. We start off with Pexias Guide to Amelia, 5th edition campaign sourcebook. This is a new 5th edition campaign setting with an adventure path that takes characters from level 1 to 11. A new campaign setting featuring 2 books, Pexias Guide to Amelia and Hand of the 8th Adventure Path. They are a follow-up to DM Dave's campaign starter set, Legends of Amelia. Amelia is the only known continent of the planet Caesar, and Amelia is a joint project with the author and his 6,500 patrons. It features 1 new class, 12 new subclasses, 6 new races, 60 new monsters, 300 locations, and 225 pages in the adventure. So that's Pexias Guide to Amelia, 5th edition campaign sourcebook. Next we have Conquest of the Ephemeral, 5e swamp sandbox setting. This is a 5e adventure in a vast evil swamp with huge digital maps, paper and token minis and musical soundscapes. And it's a sandbox adventure starting at 1st level. It is about a lone fortress in the middle of an ancient evil swamp, your base of operations. As young adventurers, the party go out there to seek fortune and some infamy. The Duke and Crown Prince are desperate to learn of what evils may be rising from the swamps after many ages of seclusion. The waters are receding and long-gone ruins are being exposed. So that's Conquest of the Ephemeral, 5e swamp sandbox setting. Now let's have a look at the new accessories. So first up I've got Dragon Scales Dice, unpainted resin D&D dice set. These are high-quality, unpainted resin D&D RPG polyhedral dice set for collectors, painters and RPG enthusiasts. They're 3D printed with high-quality resin, and each individual dice has a dragon scale finish and are ready to be painted, and all dice are balanced. There is several sets of polyhedrals from D4 to D20 with D100. So go and have a look on their Kickstarter page if you like fancy dice. So that's Dragon Scales dice, unpainted resin, D&D dice set. How about something for your better or worse half? Well, I've got you covered there. This is RPG Inspired Jewelry by So Lovely. Ever wondered what RPG Inspired Jewelry would look like? Well, here we go. This is jewelry, comes in 3 different colours due to the plating. Rose and yellow gold plating alongside the natural white colour of silver, which is 0.925 sterling silver. They are trying to keep things simple to start with for this Kickstarter, with 4 classes: Warrior, Mage, Archer, Healer / Archbishop, and each class has the following: a ring, a mismatched stud earring and some pendants. So if you fancy some RPG jewelry, check out RPG Inspired Jewelry by So Lovely. Next up we have Halflings, the Witch Hunters. This is a gang of halfling witch hunters in 25mm resin miniatures and the STL files. They're a set of high-definition dwarves printed using 4K monochrome LCD screen printed. So you buy the resin miniatures or the STL files. The choice is yours. That's Halflings, the Witch Hunters, and there's some really nice looking miniatures in there. So that's all the new stuff. I'm going to be missing out a lot of the ending stuff because I've covered it in previous episodes, but there's a couple of things here which I didn't cover, so I'm going to cover these now as I've not covered them before. So in 5e related, there's Endless Encounters Dungeons. This is a 5th edition and BX adventure generator from Pacesetter Games. It's a 200 plus page supplement for 5e and BX, and you will be able to randomly craft a dungeon to play through in just minutes. An adventure generator for characters level 1 to 8 for the 5th edition and BX game systems is included. Under the accessories section, I've got the Witcher Hybrid Dice. This is an official Witcher dice set by Q Workshop, handcrafted from 2 different materials, available in a variety of shapes and colours. Basically, you choose whether you want metal or plastic frame, then you choose your insert, whether you want wood or composite, then you choose your pattern design, and then finally you choose your dice set, whether you want an RPG set which covers you from D4 to D100, a poker set which is 5 6-sided dice, or an essentials kit which is 4 D6 and 2 D10. So those are the Witcher Hybrid Dice. And the final one on today's shows is a virtual tabletop Mythic Table. Now, before I go on to this, I do want to point out that I have done some unpaid voluntary work for Mythic Table, so I have got an interest in them, although I have backed the Kickstarter myself at the paying level. So Mythic Table is an open source, non-profit virtual tabletop playing role-playing games online with your friends. It's non-profit, open source online platform, and the VTT will be free of charge. There are no features which will be locked behind paywalls. In partnership with World Anvil and the Open Gaming Network, Mythic Table is expanding its functionality to provide game masters and homebrew creators a platform to buy and sell game assets. So it's a very young virtual tabletop. Do check it out. It's not often you see an open source non-profit VTT out there. So that's everything for this episode. I hope you found something there to tickle your fancy. And yeah, that's it. So I'll see you all on the flip side. You've been listening to the Dragons Are Real podcast. For more information, check out the website at petejones.neocities.org. The blog is dragonsarerealpodcast.tumblr.com. We are also on YouTube, Facebook and other platforms. If you want to get in touch, you can send me a voicemail via the Anchor app at anchor.fm/dragonsarereal, or you can send me an email at dragonsarerealpodcast@pm.me.